This meeting will come to order. Welcome to the November 18th work session, and Board Member Jim Estes will be leading us in our pledge. Thank you, Mr. Estes.
You're
well
welcome.
done. And I don't know anybody for a moment of silence tonight. We'll just Thursday. So, okay. I guess we'll. Any questions about the agenda? Okay. Hearing none. Any questions regarding the consent agenda? Mr. Odom, I think we'll move to number 8, since Spotlight will be Thursday. Anything you wanted to say about the Atlas program?
Of course, this is our homeless program. You know, at Academic Tank leads to Achieving Students program. But typically, it's surprising how many students in Rutherford County are homeless. The definition that the federal government uses, but Ms. Snell will share that with us Thursday night. I think you'll find it interesting that we send backpacks with food home with kids and work for shelter for them and do so many other things to help some of these young people stay in school.
Do we have maybe 700 plus, or maybe close to 8?
You know, it is. It usually gets somewhere around 1,000 before the year's out. But she'll tell us where she is Thursday night and how that tracks compared with the other.
Number 8, then.
Number 8 is old business, a 5-year building plan. And from what you saw Tuesday, I guess, or what was it, Tuesday last week, we've changed a date or two, right, Jeff? Changed a date or two on that. Which specific one did we change? Basically, the list, itemized list is the same. There's some dates there. Optimal dates, we'll put it that way,
Okay.
when you're looking at it.
And Mr. Clardy is not here this evening.
He's not here this evening.
Okay.
After our trip Saturday, of course, we looked at some areas. I do think probably our area that's most significant in growth right now, where we're beginning to have the most issues we talked about, was that middle school in that Smyrna area, simply because of the size of the other schools that feed that school. And I was actually at Rock Springs Middle again.
That would draw from a new school, a new middle school there would draw from.
It would draw from, and of course, it's how you draw your zone, of course, and you know that, but it'd be Rock Springs Middle, probably Smyrna Middle, Stewart's Creek Middle, because the area that we're looking at is kind of in that a bowl or semi-bowl around those particular areas. And of course, we know of the development land's been approved at Stewart's Creek Middle, what's coming up there. And we're already seeing the Rock Springs, their growth, what they're seeing is actually from the apartments kind of behind Target. If you've been in Smyrna lately and saw those, you can see them rising from kind of the hillside there. And so that's what they've been seeing, and told me, again, that they had seen at least 45 students since their fall break. And actually, I talked to Mr. Treadway this morning, Principal Treadway, and he said there actually were 2 sitting out there wanting to come in now. So it's growing.
Rock Springs, there isn't any land available to put an extension on that, is there?
Not really. You've got the rock bluff, you know, if you've been there, you kind of know what that looks like. In fact, it really doesn't have much room for even a portable when you look at Rock Springs Middle. Of course, our design at that time was for, you know, the 850 to 1,000 for the middle schools, and his numbers are way up. And of course, even Blackman Middle now is running close to 1,200. So,
And Smyrna Middle cannot be.
we have portables, you know, we're moving portables there, so that's the other issue.
Mr. Odom, on this, middle school southwest in 7,
That was in some of there that, you know, when we rode out to Veterans Parkway and looked at some areas like that, because if you remember when we rezoned before, Rockvale Middle is already quite large. And so you've got Blackman, which we've added to, but again, their growth is up so much that I could see that sometime, be it 17, 18, somewhere out there, if Musper continues to grow on that southwest corridor, they're ours. And that's
I think I saw,
talking about.
didn't we see in the paper Sunday, Mr. McDonald, was it yesterday, is it 131 acres that were annexed into the city? So, which would be prime developing property on the veteran, and I believe it was on Veterans Parkway too, wasn't it? I think it was. I think it's right in that general area. I don't know if it's frontage.
McDonald at Blackman too, so I'm not sure exactly which piece.
It was, it's the one at, yes, sir.
I got one other. Refresh my memory on I know Mr. Holliday mentioned it the other day on the Roy Waldron addition down there. What would be the status on that?
Basically, with Royal Waldron, one of the things is because of the number of portables that we have there, and so some of that is an upgrade, very similar to Smyrna Primary, but it does increase enrollment. So, of course, we've had to go back now and add portables to Laverne Lake, and you've got. I do not expect that area to grow a lot because you're bounded really by Davidson County. You're bound by the airport property on one side, you got the lake on another side, but they're replacing some of the things with apartments and all. So what we're seeing now is really coming from that apartment growth. That's your area, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it'll be surprising the density that will continue to come there. We will continue to see growth in that area, and it will just be a characteristic of density that we're seeing in these middle schools as well with the increase of apartments.
How many portables does Roy Waldron have?
Let's see if I've got my portable sheet. I've got that one. They have, they're Title I schools, so they have a pretty good number of. Put that in there. I'll have that for
Thursday night?
tonight. I can do that. I don't think
I was looking for mine as well. That because I was trying to compare and contrast the Oakland Middle demand versus the Roy Waldron demand, and what I've been seeing or hearing is that student-teacher ratio issue, which is different between elementary and middle. And do we have a critical situation in Roy Waldron, whereas we have a important situation at Oakland Middle? Both of them have to be addressed, but where do we see that priority?
She has double teachers in several of the portables on the single side, especially with Title I. One may be intervening with one grade or one subject and others, and they put screens up. Do you remember how many portables, Mr. Zaga? I mean, it's significant, and the building is packed. They've turned just about every area that you could think of for small groups. Very often it's a small area. Turn it in for small group instruction and all, too.
It may be that the most appropriate action is to just send both in that second time frame there, Oakland Middle and Roy Waldron. But I'm really looking at, do we need to move Roy Waldron addition up one cycle into fiscal 16-17 projects?
Let me chime in just a second. In regards to that same year, the elementary school where we're talking about the middle school in Smyrna area, what's that elementary, what's it going to leave?
That was we talked about this, and looking out as far as 19, we weren't comfortable saying. We just kind of know from our growth that that pattern would call for another one about that time. If Murfreesboro has gotten more aggressive in addressing some of that, so what's helped there when they opened Overall Creek, and all certainly helped us and gave us some capacity there. So that may stretch that a little bit if we could.
What I was talking about is up in the Smyrna area next year for opening in 16.
Yeah,
Well,
you
okay.
want what schools it would affect?
Yeah, because, and I'll tell you where I'm going with, in regard to what Mr. Holiday said, as far as what the need is for that elementary, I'd like to know that, but what my thinking was is possibly if you moving your Roy Waldron and your Dayton Jury up there and flipping it back down.
The property we're looking at in Smyrna, if you remember, we were talking about buying enough for an elementary and a middle. At David Urey, we have portables at David Urey. You have at Cedar Grove. Stewart's Creek this year is approaching 900, 870, 80 at Stewart's Creek Elementary. So again, all of those feeder units around that are at capacity, or we're already placing portables there. So we just felt in the priority that the middle was going to be the greatest priority first, but the elementary I cannot see falling very far behind, because I think the growth, when we built the sewer and the infrastructure out towards the Stewart's Creek area, there's a lot of land to develop out there, and that's where you're going to see it. Of course, we have portables at Stewartsboro, there. So, I mean, there's everything we have down in that area. Again, we're already pretty much using portables.
Which schools would knock out the most portables? I guess if we built an elementary, or if we built
Well, I mean, the John Coleman situation got 17. You got about a dozen he's probably going to go print us one. The dozen or so down at Roy Waldron. Most of the largest number of portables in any one place are schools in that area. I'd say Roy Waldron's probably number one. I mean, not Roy Waldron, but John Coleman's number one. Probably number two would be Roy Waldron. The others are 2, 3, 4, 5, that sort of thing.
We have several projects that really behooves us to try to do at one time, but the dollar amount is staggering.
And people that's listening to us on television or YouTube, whatever, we're talking about 146 portables, and the board members know that. And so it's relative in that respect. So,
And every one of them are in use at this point,
For
are
something.
they not?
they are. We kind of shuffle them around each year. In fact, this is the time of year where Mr. Zago in the next few days will send the principals, what's your estimates for next year? What are you seeing in growth? If you could have your way, how many portables would you have? And then we have to sit down together and build into the budget movement of portables. Typically what we have, though, we'll have a building completed or an addition completed or something that'll allow us, hey, we know we got these portables for this addition, but we opened Blackman up, but we moved those last year. So we do not have really something we're opening up this year to clear portables. That's the other scary thing. If we
This way, I guess. Back to the Roy Waldron, you say you got
that didn't have my towers on it.
We'll just ask you which ones we want to pull out.
Did you say seven, actually, not
There's
12?
7 at Roy Walter, I did send 2 more, but they had 5.
Is that counting the single rooms or not the doubles? That's
There's
that's
8 doubles,
spaces.
or there's 2 doubles and 3 singles.
With 2 teachers in some of the singles, because I've been there, I mean,
Yes, sir, there may be double teachers, but you have to remember what Mr. Adams said, they're a Title I school, which means they have a high ESL and low socioeconomic ratio, so you end up with a lot of Title I teachers and ESL teachers. And many times you could put 2 or 3 of those teachers in a single classroom, and they're doing it in several places.
I guess, with these renovations, additions, or let's say the renovation and the renovation for, David Urey and addition for Royal Walden, what would that eliminate, portable water? Eliminate all of them, or?
Well, the 7 at Roy Waldron, and how many David Urey now? That one?
I have 9 classrooms.
In portables? Well, that would be 16 classrooms. How many is Cedar Grove? Because this is what we're talking about in that area, because Roy Waldron wouldn't do it.
All right, let's say, just look at it, you're gonna eliminate 16 portables for these 2 deals, period. What do you think you're gonna roll with these other schools that you're thinking overcrowded? Or that we know is overcrowded, I guess, or is heading that direction? Stewart's Creek, for example, I'm just looking at flip-flop. What's that gonna cost you in portables? If you see what I'm saying, I mean, it's,
So are you including John Coleman?
on that, no.
Sorry.
I wasn't including John.
Okay.
Just looking at Royal Walden, David Urey for right now. Just throwing it out.
We at one time thought about, Gary did some rough drawings of adding on to David Urey. Did not have a lot of property there. You'd have to go up 2 stories. But again, there's such a need with Cedar Grove and all too. That's why we thought if we could buy this property to build a new elementary, if you're really looking down the road to benefit you more years, you'd be much better probably in this case to back off and build that new elementary. Of course, we got rid of the portables at Smyrna Primary, except for the maintenance one there. That's been very nice.
Like in the middle as well, this passage year. So, and the reduction of overall creek on Barfield also freed up, doubles there that we moved as well, but we moved around several. Actually, I have this list here, if you'd like to have that, Mr. Odom, on how we moved those, but, I've spoken to Mr. Odom, we actually have 2 classrooms of portables that are not absolutely being utilized at this moment, out of the 146.
Typically, principals, when they'll send the kind of wish list, we'll see 20-something to 30, and then we get down and just see, again, if it's a building, we see what we have left, and we just prioritize.
You know, the quandary,
Phase 2, Mr. Clardy sends people out to see, can we get another one there? How difficult is it to do that? That's just what you have to do.
and the quandary is that we have so many schools that have so many portables, then we, like Smyrna Primary, we get children out of portables into the building, and then other schools fill up, and we move portables there. So it's just a vicious cycle of portable dominoes almost.
And when we moved some of the last ones that you moved from Roy Waldron, if you remember, we actually had to surplus a couple of those. They were in such bad shape, that they just weren't movable. You know, there's some at Thurman Francis that sits behind Thurman Francis that I don't ever remember when they weren't there in the 70s. When they were there. They've been there a long time.
Well, and every time you move them, the structural integrity diminishes somewhat, maybe not a lot, but after 20 years, if they've been moved a half a dozen times, that's a cause and effect problem right there, so.
Jeff, what's the cost this year? 8 to 10,000? Of course, it depends on what you're running to. 8 to 10. Yeah, all the ADA requirements and running your intercom, your safety things with that. A double wide portable's 55 to 60,000 now.
We have moved them.
We added portables to 8 different schools last summer.
It seems to me that there's a reason to act quickly on land acquisition that we know is inevitable. And so the land that we've looked at in the Smyrna area for elementary and middle, that seems like a priority, and we should keep it as high on the list as possible. But I also feel like that the renovation and construction of additional classrooms at David Urey and Roy Waldron are also high priority issues. So if we could separate the middle school, elementary school in the Smyrna area into two pieces of land acquisition and then construction, then perhaps we could take the Roy Waldron and David Urey, move them up alongside land acquisition, and then take the construction of those schools on that land and bring them down and just, set that in motion to where we get immediate answer to classroom need, and we also get, as quickly as we know it's inevitable, we're going to have that land before the land values continue to rise.
The issue that we have with the Smyrna property is that we've talked to people that are developing the area next to it, and they're kind of giving us a window. So I would be somewhat fearful of buying, just say, the middle school property and not going ahead and picking up the middle, because sewer, gas, water, everything is really close. But when we put it there, for the school and the capacity, you just know what's going to happen to the other piece. So I would hate to separate those two. Not that you're going to build on them right now, but I think
I agree. I think we should get both parcels, sufficient land for middle and elementary. All I'm suggesting is to separate the construction.
We could do some of that, yes.
We could even do, pad preparation, along with the Roy Waldron and David Urey expansion, but then put construction down into that 17, 18 cycle.
That still leaves us with John Coleman staring us in the face, too.
Because this is the first year we've placed John Coleman on that. But again, up until most recently, we didn't really realize we had land and an option. Rutherford County just really never closed a school, because we don't have that luxury, have to use it. But we found we had some land there and could use a part of the existing structure. That was attractive. The other piece, Mr. Clardy's mentioned some, at Walter Hill, we have the hands-on science storage there, and those of you who have been know how much space that takes up for our size. There's literally some ways, if you had to, you could relocate some of the hands-on science in some of the older parts of John Coleman, if you didn't want to remove that when you built the other on, which would then create additional capacity for you at the Walter Hill area. So again, all of that begins to fit together if we can plan this well.
I certainly want us to give great care in whatever decision that we make. My question to the board is, and we may be under time constraint, Mr. Odom, that you would like for us to go ahead and make this decision this week. Is this something for us to consider again and wait till I guess I'm gonna need consensus of the board to say, do you want to make this decision Thursday night, or do you need a little more time and the opportunity to communicate with Mr. Odom and Mr. Clardy before we set this, set this in ink, I guess?
We're still open for discussion on these items right now.
Certainly.
The Laverne High School, Smyrna High School bleachers, restrooms, concession area, which was brought before the county commission, I don't know how many times, 3 or 4 times at least, I would think, and has always been pushed back. And I think that's very unfortunate, but anyway, that's what happened. This is more of a security issue, I guess, than anything else. I know we discussed it fully a couple of years. There was some discussion, and now I just look back kind of and smile. That well, could we just do one of them one year and one of them the next, And that came up for discussion considerably. And if we'd done that, it'd be done now, wouldn't it? But I think we do have a security issue there, and I'm familiar with it, but I think a lot of you probably are familiar with it. And I certainly know Mr. Blair, who played ball there and goes to a lot of their games, is very familiar with that area. That is just an absolute bottleneck, and I think well, it was said at the county commission. I'll say it here. I think it's a dangerous situation. It's certainly, but the potential is there. And now Laverne is not as serious, and I don't think, because they have some items on the other side of the field. And I'm right about that, aren't I, Mr. Blair? Concession stand area and restrooms, and they come through there a lot, come through the Laverne home side, a lot of them do, but
The restroom facilities on the visitor side are temporary.
Yeah.
okay, right, okay.
There's a small concession.
And I believe the board,
Oh, sure.
the board put those in, I believe, or at least contributed to that in some way.
Mr. Ash, I talked to him this year, I think they got foul off the portable or whatever down there, and I think he was telling me how much it cost him to get in. So, and what he was looking at is a temporary deal, so I guess it's short term or whatever, is what concession stand they've got there. To try to utilize make some kind of restaurant facility out of it, but it would be just a small thing. I've said for years that Smyrna learned both of these had upgrades on those 2 things, and, because I've been to both of them many times, and, it's needed. I think they waited a long time for it.
Yes, that's right. I agree with that. I mean, we all know that it comes down to a choice. We're going to build classrooms. I mean, and we know that. And as a result of that, the projects like this tend to get put on the back burner, and before you know it, they're off the burner altogether, and then they come roaring back. If we ever have a serious problem down there, well, I don't want to think about that. No, let's pretend like that's not going to happen. But that's really the problem. You pretend like it's not going to happen. And believe me, some of these crowds, they pour in there. I'll just use Smyrna as an example. I have seen that place, and Mr. Blair, I know you have, Mr. Hodge, where it's absolutely running over with people. It's standing everywhere, particularly when the red and gold show up. And it just seems particularly on those nights. But at any rate, I just think that's. I want to continue my question if I can. I don't know right now about the more time necessarily, but the order in which things appear on here, which is really what we're talking about here, because as Mr. Holly has already said, these are all priorities, really. I mean, there's not a thing on here that, to me, you can say, well, that's not as important as the thing right next to it. But you got to have an order. So the land for the Oakland Middle Annex is on here first. For any particular reason, or it just happens to be, I mean, something's got to be first. Is that,
That was what we originally had in this year's plan. There's a thing keeps balloning every year. It is for this year. And that's where that for what happened.
and we are aware that I'm Pittard right next door. The city school is overcrowded.
Over 900 is what.
Yeah, and I would suspect they're going to go middle school right next door. So what we need to do is come up with an order, but we have about 15 things listed here for the whole 5 years. So how do, when the springtime rolls around, and we go to the Health and Ed Committee, how many things are we going to request?
It's going to be order, but it's also going to be grouping. It's going to be a chronological
Understood.
grouping too, so. Well, that's what I'm asking. Do we want to decide that between tonight and Thursday night, or are you going to want more time? You know, Thursday is fine with me. If you're going to be ready to make, as a board, we're going to be ready to make that decision.
Mr. Blair, may I make one more comment, please?
Certainly.
The county commission has decided already to buy the Daily News Journal property. That's done, and some of the renovation and whatnot has already started. It's on the planning stages. The architect's been hired. $5 million has already been put into all of that for the Judicial Center, and that's sort of, well, the last figure I heard it was $70 million. The first figure I heard about 6-7 years ago was $55 million. So you can take that for whatever it's worth. I think we have a window here that I don't believe they're going to want to borrow a lot of money onto the, not this next budget. They never want to borrow money, of course, but you understand what I'm saying, talking about amounts, the following year. So we may have a window here, and we've got to recognize, I think, that the county commission, I think, will recognize our needs. We've got to recognize theirs. I think that's fair. And the taxpayers have got money put into a lot of things. At any rate, I'd like to get at least the request in on as many items as we deem to be prudent into this spring.
I agree with you. I mean, this board's been very wise over the years in property in that you have property when you purchase for Rockville Middle for the high school. Whitworth Buchanan, you purchase property to place a high school there. And so you know it's coming. And so when we buy a piece of property, again, and run infrastructure, if we do not purchase enough to handle that and maybe an adjoining school that we want to, then it's developed very quickly. So it's just a matter of our experience over the years dealing with that. So I'm with you. It's just going to be the dollar amount of how much we can ask for at one time.
And then the order
I'd like
becomes
to
important.
see, you know, this year we've done working on Eagleville, Smyrna Primary, the major addition at Blackman Middle. So we've actually added building and capacity this year. A lot of people say you didn't build a building this year. Well, there's a lot of students when you consider those additions. But last year with Stewart's Creek High, we've got to consider a whole building. I mean, we're at the point where we've got to think about not portables, not the other things, but get another building in progress. And John, and the Roy Waldron needs it really badly. Part of that's a replacement, and I want to get it there, but I'm just, again, most concerned about that growth that I'm seeing in all of those middle schools right there. First priority for me would be to look at that, because we're going to be in trouble, those middle schoolers.
Well, I think in regards to I think as a board through the years that we have been mindful of what we send up, what we send to the commission. But the flip side of that is, with the growth we've got, we continue to go backwards. And I think we're at a point here, just by looking at the figures we got here, we're gonna hit a wall somewhere here. You're talking about next year 79 million, then 67 million, then you drop to 11, then you jump to 122. I don't know, maybe a good education system is bringing all the growth. I don't, but when the growth comes, we've got to have somewhere to put them. And so I guess you could say it's just take your pick, portables or new buildings. And so I think, we're at a tough stage here that if we don't continue to move forward with our request, and they're not funded, we're just going to continue to go backwards. And you got to have somewhere to put the students. And that's just what does concern me is not this year, but the 15, 16, 16, 17 is the back-to-back years, big dollars. But that's the situation we're in, unfortunately, that, we just got to make sure we get a request right in order that's going to meet our needs, so.
Well, the good thing about having a work session is that that we all have access to Mr. Odom the next day and a half, Wednesday and Thursday. Anything you want to ask him or
We'll bring you the portable count. I just think about that tonight. We'll print them another one off. Do that. Our
Yes, sir.
enrollment's grown about 1,800, between 1,800 and 1,900 last year and this year, student enrollment growth. So, I mean, that's close to 2 middles, 2 elementaries, or whatever you want to look at it.
Mr. Hodge.
I just got one more question, and I'll, Mr. Jordan, maybe you can give a little advice on the 79, the next year. Would you see increasing that is what you're thinking would possibly be? I'm trying to get your years, when you're talking about the judicial building and all, which area would you be talking about?
If we were going to do those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 projects down to major capital repairs, Fund 177, the second time that's listed in the 16 year, I think that's probably a prudent request. Yes, sir.
So,
And to answer your question, no, not necessarily. To increase it, no. And I know we're always between the old proverbial rock and the hard place here. It's our job to make a request and be able to back it up with what we absolutely need for Rutherford County citizens and for their children, and make a strong case for it as possible, and be able to back it up with facts and figures. We've got the ideal guy right here to do that very thing, and Mr. Clardy as well, and others. If that gets picked over, and some of it gets turned down, and I'm not saying we can't have some input, I'm certainly not saying that, and some suggestions from the county commission, but eventually it leaves our hands, doesn't it, Ms. Hodge? And after we do everything we're supposed to do, and if they turn something down, say, well, you don't need this right now, you're going to have to wait, then we're going to have to live with it, but at least we ask. If you don't ask, you never get it.
I understand that. That's what we've always did.
Yes, sir.
I was just raising the question, from your standpoint, would you think we'd be ahead of the game to leave these figures about like what they were, or increase it, since the 1 year you're gonna have a big ticket item with the judicial building and everything. That was my hope.
Go ahead and ask for
Which would-
anything that we can ask for.
That was my whole question.
which would fall in the year after that, the judicial building that you're talking about. And,
Mr. Jordan, aren't you suggesting, though, that when they borrow for the judicial building, why not have a reasonable or substantial amount for schools that year as well?
I don't see how we can avoid having something, yes.
Agreed.
And I also think it's always critical, and y'all have done a great job. I wasn't here, but this staff has done a great job, and certainly the last three superintendents have done a great job of giving the commission a heads up on what you're going to need, and you know, what you foresee. That's what the 5-year plan is all about. But it's also important to say, now, look, you know, we're not going to do this school right now, you know, but we absolutely are going to have this thing on such and such a day we project. I think that's very important to the commission. I think they certainly like the 5-year plan, and they very well know that a 5-year plan, the more days you get away from today, the less accurate it is. They know that. 4 years from now, that this is not in stone and so forth. They know that, but at least it gets them an opportunity to plan for their tax rate and things of that nature.
Holiday.
I came in a few minutes late, and I apologize for that. Oakland Middle, there was a parcel of land to the side. Did we get any report on that this evening?
He's examining that. We know the owners and that sort of thing, but we're in that process now, making those contacts.
We don't know anything definitively tonight.
Not tonight.
That's fine. That being said, here's something to think about. If we took the fiscal 15-16 and moved it from the 6.9 that we are currently showing, which is a very, very modest amount, and it is basically the school board saying we understand that the county needs a judicial building and the judicial building is a priority for the county commission. But if we added to that fiscal 15-16 the Laverne Smyrna bleacher restroom concessions area that we have repeatedly brought to the commission, and for us to leave it out for a year almost says that it's not the critical priority that it is. If we moved that to the 15-16, then that would be 1.8 million up there. If we also took the Smyrna land and said it is appropriate for us to act quickly and swiftly on the Smyrna land acquisition, only the land acquisition, and we moved that to the 15-16 budget. And then we also said that at Roy Waldron, we've got more teachers there than we have classrooms, and we have a critical need for that addition. Then those would be 3 projects that we would add to the 15-16 budget at it would take that number to 16.1 million. Now, that's a big jump, but we're making a request, and it's a request for projects that we can absolutely back up with facts and figures. And we leave it to the county commission then to help us to prioritize weighing all of the things that they have in mind. It would reduce us then to 74.6 million on 16-17 and 62.7 on 17-18, and our deference to the judicial project, which is certainly appropriate, would not be quite as extreme. And it would also show that maybe as pressing a need in this county, as there is a pressing need for a judicial building, is a maintenance of investment for the educational system, because we just can't afford to get behind. That would be something, I'll answer you, Mr. Blair, that would be something that I would be interested in making a motion and voting on Thursday night.
We got a lot to mull over. Is there any more discussion? Again, take advantage of Mr. Odom. Tomorrow, you won't have access to Gary Clardy, possibly Thursday.
May not Thursday, he's coming tomorrow.
you have access to Mr. Odom for the next day and a half, and we'll come prepared to make a decision on Thursday night, unless I hear otherwise.
Yeah, the reason I'm concerned about the middle school is of course, we got health ed, we got budget, we got full commission, but then you got the design phase for that, and also, that's one thing, when you actually get to the building too, we need to move on that too, to get something started, so that next year we're building that building, if possible. Well, so we'd be ready for the next. Starting on it sometime.
Which is, and again, it's not fair to ask which is more important, but is it more important to find middle school relief with Stewart's Creek Middle, Rock Springs Middle, the Smyrna Middle project, or the Oakland Annex? Because those are not overlapping geographic areas. They're equally pressing. I know we're overcrowded at Oakland Middle right now, and so I feel like that there's a pressing need there. But we speak of the overcrowding at several different schools that could be alleviated by a new building in that Smyrna area.
Oakland Middle actually lost a few students this year. Part of that was the sixth grade, and I've said this to y'all several times before. Typically, from Musselburgh City, we get 50% of their sixth graders, and then we'll get the other 50% in seventh grade. Probably the number this year is closer to the 35%, something like that, somewhere in that range. I think a lot of that was the meals and that. And so we took a one gasp of breath on Oakland Middle this year that we didn't see 60 or 70 more students come there. But with Homer Pittard, and they're telling me it's over 900 and it grew so much this year, they're coming to us. So, I mean, you kind of got a year reprieve. Next year, when you got that one, much of that will flow on through. So the seventh grade growth next year will be above a normal seventh grade growth. If you've got 35%, then you're going to have to deal with the other 65 probably in the seventh grade next year. So that's what's going to happen.
All right. Okay, well, we'll be back together on this issue on Thursday. On these 8 policies, since you're going to read them Thursday, is there any need to read them tonight other than to just go through and say charter schools, hepatitis B, sick leave? I mean, is there any need?
Yeah, and it's just up to you. I'll be glad to
Is
do
there any
whatever
need
you're
to read each
request.
one because they'll be read for the public record for Thursday night? Is that okay with the board? Good. Okay, we'll move on to general discussion by the board. Mr. Hodge, I think you said you wanted to.
I'd just like to make mention that I think a large majority of the board knows that Sunday Mr. Blair was nominated and received nomination as the vice president for the Tennessee School Board Association. So I'd just like to say congratulations. Thank you. Look forward to you doing good things.
Thank you. Being involved with their executive board certainly has been enlightening. Had an opportunity to collaborate and communicate with school board members across the state. We have some incredible education leaders involved in I believe we have 960 school board members across the state, 141 school districts here in Tennessee, and as we've all experienced, times are changing even today, and I'm grateful to Doris Jernigan. He led me to that water and trough, and the TSBA programs for education, about education, certainly have been enlightening to me, and I've enjoyed the friendships and the relationships that I've built over the last several years, and I'm pleased that this board has been so involved in the training and in taking advantage of those collaborative experiences too. So thank you, Mr. Hodge. I'm really looking forward to serving this next year with TSBA.
I think it's the first time, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
Rutherford County history, right?
Well, Representative Hood was an officer for the city school board.
That doesn't count.
But,
No, it didn't count. Of course it counts.
So I felt kind of that I may have needed to qualify that a little bit, but I like that company, so that's good. Mr. Young, did you have
Yeah,
you have something?
I'd like to follow up a little bit on our meeting we had with the legislators last week. I think that was a very good meeting, very productive. We recommended in that meeting that we would meet more often, more than just once a year or 2 years. And I think it'd be something that we could do here as a board, is maybe consider giving them a 3, 4, 5-year plan on what we think our issues are. And that'd be something I'd like to consider.
I think it's a great idea.
We might want to think about meeting again with them. I don't know about quarterly. I don't know, but whatever is fine with me. But maybe after this legislative session, April, May, or right here. I'm sure Mr. Campbell would be receptive to that and their board. And I certainly echo what Mr. Young just said. That meeting went a whole lot better than it might have.
And it's my hope that the 8 of us will all do our due diligence and stay in touch with them by email or text or phone or whatever correspondence you choose. And I believe that Chairman Campbell and the city board and Dr. Gilbert will also be motivated to do the same, because if we don't tell them what we think, feel, or know, we can't be as upset with them as we were last year. So I felt as we started the program, you know, I said to the legislators that I felt like we had a disconnect last year. Well, there should not be a disconnect this year. We're sharing our thoughts. We're sharing our issues. So if they go another direction, it's because they chose to go another direction. It wasn't because we didn't give them our guidance. And I think Mr. Hodge, you pointed it out about seeking Mr. Odom's and Dr. Gilbert's input, and we have the very best directors of schools in the state right here in Rutherford County, and to not utilize you, Mr. Odom and Dr. Gilbert, it would be a real shame.
Mr. Blair, I want to echo that as well. I thought that Mr. Hodges' comments specifically to that, you know, for the legislators, no matter what the issue is, if it's related to education, if you can't get in touch with anyone else, or if you choose to get in touch with, the persons to get in touch with are Mr. Odom and Dr. Gilbert and their particular expertise and perspective. While we bring constituent perspective, and that is certainly very valuable, they have an expertise that just cannot be overvalued, and Mr. Hodge made that point wonderfully. Also, in closing comments, Mr. Estes brought up the one thing that had not been talked about, and that was technology investment. And I was so glad as we were wrapping up that meeting for his comments. They were absolutely right on target and so necessary, because technology investment is very, very important. Mr. Estes, great job.
You got some kudos out there, Mr. Estes.
He got on the front page. That's
Yeah,
all I know.
yeah. Okay. Amen. Amen.
I'll just make another general comment in the last week. I think in regards to what Ms. Young was talking about, possibly meeting with, I would think it may be a good idea possibly to try to pick out a time while they're in session. For the simple reason that we'll have a good idea of what's on the table, and what direction some of it's going. I think it would be, if it's an issue
And I believe consistent communication with them throughout the legislative year could or should make some difference this time.
At least 5 or 6 people, board members from here or the city, made that very point, that to the legislators to call Superintendent Gilbert or Director Odom, and or any of us, but most importantly of all, ask some of these teachers that are putting up with it or doing it actually every single day. And it's not like they're scarce. I mean, there's hundreds, thousands of them. And that point was made by a number of people, and that's absolutely what they need to do. I wanted to ask, I don't know, Ms. Michaels, if you know, or I don't know, but is that meeting on city TV? And was it YouTube? Was it taped at all?
No.
Well, that's a shame.
I didn't see any cameras there.
No.
I didn't know what their... I know city council met that night, and I guess that's where they went. No, they missed a good meeting, didn't they? A productive meeting, and not doing the one down there. I'm disappointed at that, but because now the general public doesn't really know exactly what was said, and they can't watch it. That's unfortunate.
Well, we'll host the next one.
Okay.
Anything else tonight? Okay. We will see you back here on Thursday. We stand adjourned.